The road to hell is paved with good intentions. No one is the villain of their own story. In this video we'll explore how, in the context of the Lord of the Rings, good and the wish to pursue it is what ultimately leads to evil almost every time. Melkor, he who arises in might, Morgoth, the black foe of the world. As the effect of power in corrupting an individual will be covered in a future video, for now we'll focus on intention. Melkor was the strongest of the Valar, the second most powerful creature in the universe, behind Eru, who is God himself. He fell as he was the closest being in existence to godhood, but he could never achieve it. He searched and searched and searched the void for the flame imperishable, for the ability to create things of his own, to create something out of nothing, independently and outside of the authority of Ilúvatar. His intentions were those of life at the beginning. They were those of creation. His inability to achieve the desire to create, his isolation in the void, as well as the stark reminder that all things that ever were, are, and will be ultimately stem from Ilúvatar himself, drove him to the evil path that he ultimately walked so viciously. Throughout all of his misdeeds, whether that be through his discord of the music of the Ainur, or his destructive nature when Aria was first born, stemmed from this one wish to create something. To dominate it, yes, but to create it above all. In Aria he raised mountains and forged volcanoes, he built great fortresses and made a realm for himself. And in the pinnacle of what had transformed from a wish to create to a greed to do so, he made himself the race of the orcs, presumably by the kidnapping of elves, Ilúvatar's firstborn. He tortured and mangled them in the worst possible way, but in the end, he could call them his own. He made the dragons and other foul beasts, and had the mire that had followed him, the Balrogs, be remade in shadow and fire. Naturally, his evil deeds are his own, as are all of those mentioned here, but to understand everything that led to what became of these characters is vital in understanding not just the legendarium, but human nature as a whole. Melkor thought he could be not just a god, but a better god than Eru, not unlike the devil in his revolt against the heavens, as was Tolkien's inspiration for the first Dark Lord of Middle-earth. In Morgoth's servant Sauron, the Lord of the Rings himself, we can find the search for order and stability, of continuation. He's forged a totalitarian state centered around himself, with servants utterly dominated by him. His domination is the bringer of peace. War will cease, and all will be well under his rule. Similar things can be said of Saruman, who in his vanity thinks he could eventually win over Sauron and become an even better lord than him and rule the world. It is these wishes, in combination with their unmatched, egotistical nature and unrivaled power, that enables them to do the things that they do. They do not kill or destroy for the sake of killing or destroying. They wish conquest in order to expand their realm. They wish fuel to empower their war machines, and it is the trees that pay the price. Have they grown to enjoy this process? Yes. Is their hunger for more never ending? Yes. Are they evil in every sense of the word? Again, yes. But they are not evil for the sake of evil. They are evil because what you and I consider evil is to them their ideal society, their balance of power, their ideal state of affairs, with themselves as judge, jury, and executioner, because it is only with them at the helm that the world could ever possibly prosper. Now, moving on from beings of primordial proportions, we could never talk of this topic without mentioning Feanor, King of the Noldor, and creator of the most precious artifacts in the history of the world, the Silmarils. He too was incredibly powerful, and he too had the wish to create, and that he did. Though the Silmarils are not the topic of this video, their importance to the world cannot be overstated. Until a future video, however, we will isolate their importance in Feanor's story simply to objects that he wished to protect at any cost and that he felt belonged to the elves and not the Valar. They were eventually stolen by Melkor, renamed Morgoth for his deeds, and Feanor vowed alongside his sons and followers to get the gems back whatever the cost may be, something that would lead to the kinslaying and rebellion against Valinor. And while that by itself showcases no particular good intention other than his own vanity in regaining his creations and sacrificing lives for what was essentially objects, there are deeper things to be uncovered. Feanor had a fiery personality from a young age. Though the elves had originally come to Valinor for its bliss, the apparent overbearing nature of the Valar in the lives of the firstborn had grown apparent to him. He yearned for independence, and not unlike Melkor, the fact that he was the strongest of his peers did not help lessen his ego. He increasingly started perceiving the elves' immortality as a form of bondage. He saw endless existence as being chained to the fate of the world. And Feanor said, "Behold the truth of all that I have spoken, and how thou art blind to them. For unwilling art thou to receive these thralls, yet one thing thou hast not reflected, that thralls your thralls shall ever be, for ye sit in bliss, and go not in the dark with weeping eyes." This, in combination with his determination to establish independence for the Noldor and their fate, are partly what led to the terrible deeds he committed, the killing of his own kind. He saw in himself a pioneer, a liberator, a creator, a leader, a king, and not one consumed by his obsessions and pride. Now, from mighty elves to leaders of men, no other showcases this point more than Denethor and Boromir. The Steward of Gondor and his eldest son are, in my opinion, the epitome of good intentions leading to evil deeds. Where the previous characters mentioned were primarily guided by their own vanity alongside what they thought was the best course of action, the foundation for both Denethor and Boromir comes in the form of duty, responsibility, and love for Gondor and her people. They desire the One Ring, knowing its evil history all too well, because they are willing to carry the burden of either using it against the enemy or caring for its protection so that it is never used by Sauron again. Their first thoughts are not to use the ring to dominate, but to protect. It is after close contact with it that the One Ring does what it does best. Takes your deepest desires, in Boromir's case, to protect Gondor, and twists them to darkness, which made him do what he did to Frodo. Denethor treats his son Faramir in the worst way, because in his head he believes that Faramir is not good enough to help the people of Gondor. Denethor doesn't care about himself. The only thing he cares about is his legacy and the future of the realm. In Faramir he mistakenly sees no future, and as such is devastated by the prospect of being succeeded by him now that Boromir is slain. He is led to devastation, to not caring anymore, to sending his remaining son to his death. It is only after Faramir is near fatally injured that the old steward understands his mistake, but it pushes him too far. He loses his mind, and in his grief, at the culmination of all his wrongdoings with his misled intentions, he nearly burns his own son alive and ultimately himself. He is a man consumed by his duty, overrun by his responsibilities to the point where he lashes out unjustifiably. And from the men of the past, it was Pharazon, the last king of Númenor, who fought Sauron and defeated him so definitively that ultimately led his entire kingdom to ruin. It was his wish to bring Númenor back to its days of glory that allowed his thoughts to be shrouded by Sauron's manipulation and made him turn directly against the immortal lands. His wish for his people and himself to rise had Númenor fly too close to the sun, burn off her wings of wax, and plunge into the ocean where she drowned. Ultimately, it comes down to people thinking they know best, not knowing everything, not having hindsight, or experiencing the trauma that forged them into something different. And even after every sin has been committed, they still see themselves pursuing that which they think is a just cause. Some naturally just want to watch the world burn, but even them, I don't think, are as simple as they seem. Tolkien's work may on the surface seem pretty self-explanatory. It is the good against the bad. And while it is not untrue in its basis, Tolkien's affinity to subtleties as well as his own religious beliefs paint a clearer, fuller picture that I think is worth exploring. Usually, in a game of black and white, you'll find the details in grey. Such is the case in real life with some of history's greatest events, and such is the case with Tolkien's Legendarium, itself filled with allegories, stories of redemption, of majestic rises and mighty falls. All roads, perhaps, are paved with good intentions. Thank you for watching.